Good morning, student. Today, we are your teachers from Group 7 and we will be discussing about the contemporary literature. But before we proceed further to our discussions, let's have some quick review about the previous topic discussed by the last group. So, anyone can tell me what was it all about? Yes? Okay, very good. It was about the literature under the Republic. And in this period, it was occurred from 1945 to 1986. This period also has marked the massive transition of our nation's quest from being captive to being independent. Note also, during this period, our country was under the state of recovery. So this is somehow related with our topic today because the period of contemporary literature was divided into two. This period was dated from 1946 to 1985. So in this is actually covered under the period of literature under the Republic. However, it is considered as under the contemporary literature because when we define contemporary period, it includes the span of historical events starting from 1945. During this period, it was marked by a strong nationalistic fervor because, class, after 4 centuries of foreign denominations, finally, the Philippines regains its freedom, which is its ultimate ambition and loftiest aspirations. It was also marked by a dynamic spirit to uphold and safeguard the nation's sovereignty. Being captive for so long is not a joke, right, class? It's been a traumatic experience for all. And since then, Filipinos were so very passionate to uphold and safeguard their nation's sovereignty. These Filipinos during those times also were heightened their interest in economic and social-cultural issues. This period was also marked by confusion and search for the identity. So, after the horror of World War II, people had different perspective on things. They might have came to the conclusion that God is either dead or didn't exist, which brought with it the idea that maybe life was meaningless after all. And at the same time, after so many foreign colonizers with different values, cultures, beliefs, and identity, it somehow influenced our ancestors during those times. This resulted to ambiguous identity. Thus, Filipino authors during those times were expressed their self through the ideas of searching identity. Nevertheless, this period witnessed the rise to fame of some authors and writers who dared to experiment with their craft. The second divisions of contemporary period is arranged from EDSA revolutions to the present. So obviously this is the most dynamic development in Philippine literature because under this period, this produced a fresh crops of works in poetry, short story, critical essay, and stage play.
Good morning, everyone. The topic that was assigned to me is about the regional literature. So, what is regional literature? Based on the module, the regional literature was a literature that portrayed the acts, beliefs, and customs of those specific areas. So, regional means pertaining to a certain area, district having a certain trait specific to that said geographical region. Regional literature was written in Ilocano, Hiligaynon, Cebuano, Bicolano, and Tagalog. And Tagalog literature, more popularly known now as the Calabarzon, referring to the provinces of Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, Rizal, and Quezon, or the Region 4A. It is a home to Tagalog-speaking people here in the Philippines. So, what is the purpose of it? The purpose of Tagalog literature is to promote nationalism and regional identity of Tagalog literature, as well as other regional literatures, which are Ilocano, Hiligaynon, Cebuano, Bicolano. Now, I will going to give an example literary works from different regions. First is Ilocano literature. We have here the Biyag na Lamang, a pre-colonial epic poem. This literary work was translated into English in September 1916. Second is Passion de Nuestro Señor Jesucristo, 1621. This is the first Ilocano Passion and the first Philippine language passion overall, written by Antonio Mejia and published in 1845. Next is Hiligaynon literature. The first one is Religio Cristiano Apostolica Romana, the first book entirely written in Hiligaynon, authored by Mariano Cortero, and Ang Baybay nga Huwaran. This literature is possibly the first modern Hiligaynon play and the first modern play overall in any Philippine language, written by Cornelio Hilado in either 1878 or 1894. Let's go to Cebuano literature. Manning is the first written Cebuano literature by Vicente Soto, the father of Cebuano literature. This story was published on July 16, 1900s in the first issue of his Ang Suga. Next one is Tungod sa Kayagang, written by Marcel M. Navarra. This is his first story that published in Nasud in 1931. Next literature is Bicolano literature. First is An Parabeta, or The Newsman, was published by Mariano Perfecto, who also established the first printing press. In the midst of numerous devotionals and religious poems, there appeared two protest plays, and pagyaw kan mga pastores kan pagkamundag ni Jesus duman sa portal sa Belen, or The Awakening of the Shepherds of Jesus' Birth, by Mariano Perfecto, and komedya na dapit sa Diyos o magna kahayagan kan pagkamundag ni Jesus, or a play about God or matters concerning birth of Jesus. Let's move on to the last literature, which is the Tagalog literature. We have here the Florante at Laura by Francisco Balagtas, published in 1838, and Banaag at Sikat, or From Early Dawn to Full Light by Lupi K. Santos, published on 1906. These literatures may become irrelevant if adequately disseminated. Works in the library archives need to be aggressively uploaded, distributed, promoted, and marketed. Today, there are more ways of preserving regional texts because of technology continues to upgrade systems of data gathering and synthesis of details via keywords, hashtags, and similar search tools. Writing about the regions using the local language and maybe first and foremost for the regions is an excellent way to go for writers. Although the great divide that is between the Ingleseros and Tagalistas, for example, still exists, writers in a local dialects are not anymore feeling isolated. Today, there is more confidence among those who write in Ilocano, Hiligaynon, Cebuano, Bicolano, and Tagalog to make their regional voices part of the bigger literary community that is even outside the country, especially in the countries in Asia. Some writers are complacent and are content to keep their works within the academic archives. Most of them have not yet found the confidence to upload their works in platforms, and one of the reasons why is the lack of technological knowledge on how their presence felt on the internet. And another hindrance could be the belief that writers should refrain from promoting their own works. Their works have to appear high on search engines, listings, using keywords, hashtags, and etc. so that Filipinos abroad will welcome a satisfactory representation of their mother tongues on the internet. Writers of regional literature used idiomatic tones and raw cultural accents so that their works will feed nostalgia and give a closer sense of home. So, before I end up with this topic, I will tell you why learning regional literature is important. So, by learning and reading literary from the regions, we will be able to feel proud because of the power of the native language that intensifies the words and creates impact to the soul, since it aims to create literary works that use mother tongue or native language that will uplift the national community. That's all for regional literature. Now I will give the time for the next reporters. Thank you for listening.
So now, let's talk about the characteristic of contemporary literature. First, English and Filipino continue to be the major media of literature. We are saying this because there is a strong stimulus for reading and writing in Filipino and in the local languages in the last decades. The wide availability of reading materials such as books and newspapers in English help Filipinos assimilate the language quickly. And nowadays, almost 78% of the population that can speak and understand English. And the second one, literature as a venue for socio-politico-economic discussion and a vehicle for personal thoughts and feelings have become more marked. Since the Middle Ages, literature has portrayed the economic world in poetry, drama, stories, and novels. The complexity of human realities highlights crucial aspects of economy. Conflicts of economic interests have social, political, and moral causes and consequences. Next, literary themes cover a wide range of subjects, most outstanding among which are existentialism and the search for identity in varying levels and settings. The medieval art of the Western world covers a wide scope of time and place, over 1,000 years of art in Europe, and at times the Middle East and North Africa. It includes major art movements and periods, national and regional art, genres and revivals, and the artist crafts and the artists themselves. Next, the Anglo-American Tradition, which includes free verse and blank verse, gain acceptance among writers. Despite their similar names, free verse poems and blank verse poems are very different. Free verse poetry has been popular from the 19th century onward, and it's not bound by rules regarding rhyme and meter, while blank verse poetry came of age in the 16th century and has been famously employed by the likes of William Shakespeare, John Milton, William Wordsworth, and countless others. Unlike free verse poems, it adheres to a strong metrical pattern. Next, the Euro-Hispanic tradition was blended with the tradition of propaganda and revolutionary literature to become a truly Filipino tradition. It was an assimilationist movement in that the propagandists, many of whom were of half Spanish parentage and saw themselves as inheritors of Spanish civilization. They also believe that Philippines should be fully incorporated into Spain as a Spanish province and not merely as colony, with the Filipinos granted the same. Next characteristic of contemporary literature, the 60s and the 70s saw the resurgence of cause-oriented literature. During the 60s and 70s, the Latin American boom was a literary movement of the 1960s and 1970s when the group of a young relatively Latin American novelists became widely circulated in Europe and throughout the world. Next, the post-Edsa tradition has moved literature from an elitist art to a more reachable vehicle of expression. Creative writing centers or academic institution where creative writing is a part of curricular offerings. Through these centers that writers get to hear about the new development in writing and derive enthusiasm for their crafts. Next, further development of regional literature has been given a stronger impetus through the inclusion of regional literary masterpieces in the college curriculum. A Filipino cultural scholar urged writers to value regional literary works, stressing that they are vital in organizing historical information of the country. The next characteristic of contemporary literature is that Filipino writers have become more conscious of their craft as shown by the regular conduct of writing workshop. Of course, Filipino writer has become more conscious of his art with the proliferation of writers' workshops here and abroad. Many of the literature available to him via the mass media and including the internet. And the last characteristic of contemporary literature is that gender and environmental issues have gained ground. The gender and environmental issues have a great impacts the social, economic, and environmental dimensions of sustainable development. Existing structural inequalities and social norms create different conditions for women and men. So that's all for today, and thank you for your listening.
Now I am going to discuss the 6 characteristics of the contemporary style. First, reality-based stories. Second, believable storyline, sometimes portraying a harsher reality or degradation of society. Third, current and modern setting. Fourth, well-defined, realistic, high-developed, and strong characters. Fifth, well-structured. And sixth, writing is more character-driven than plot-driven. This includes base stories with strong characters and believable stories. It is also contains a harsher reality as if it happened in real life. The setting usually keeps to the current or modern era, and it should be well defined, must be realistic, and has a strong characteristic. Now let's move on to genres of contemporary literature. Genres literature included novel and poetry. When we say novel, it is a typically representing character and action with some degree of realism. While poetry, it evokes concentrated imaginative awareness of experience or a social or a specific emotional response through language chosen and arranged for its meaning and sound. There are 6 popular genres such as flash fiction, short stories, slam poetry, plays, memoirs, and autobiographies. When we say flash fiction, it is a fictional work of extreme variability that still offers character and plot development. Example of flash fiction is Give It Up by Franz Kafka. Next is short stories. Short stories is a stories with fully developed theme but significantly shorter and less elaborate than a novel. Example of a short story is The Kind Man and His Money by Carlos Salinas. Another example of popular genres is slam poetry. It is a competition arts event in which poets perform a spoken word poetry before a live audience and a panel of judges. Example of slam poetry is Poetry by Brian McKidd. Number 4 is plays. It is a consisting mostly of dialogue between characters and intended for theatrical performance rather than just reading. Example of plays is Twelfth Night by William Shakespeare. Another example of popular genres is memoirs. It is a historical account or biography written from personal knowledge or special sources. Example of memoirs is Angela's Ashes by Frank McCoy. Last is autobiographies. When we say autobiographies, it is a self-written account of one's life. Authors found inspiration in the events of the time period. They often wrote about the realities and experiences that occurred no matter how brutal they may have been. In order for the authors to relate to the story, they usually have an inspiration to create a meaningful event of the period. And they wrote based on their experiences in life.
Lumuwas nga ako rito sa Manila eh.
This is based on the novel of Edgardo Reyes titled The Claws of Life. The film perfectly captures the hardship of poverty during Marcos' administration.
Ang anak ko.
It depicts the situation of female inmates in the city jail.
Baka mamatayan pa. Anak.
Ikaw din naman ang ginagawa mo ang gusto mo!
Another book that became a blockbuster written by Lol Hati Bautista and adapted into film by Chito Ronyo.
One best-selling book ni Bob Ong. Aba, nakakabasa na pala ako, the movie.
This was written by Bob Ong in the modern time.
Imperial and Andy Eigenman.
Kanta niya, no? Tsaka naka 33 times siya.
Directed by Mark May.